Hello, everyone. I'm Paul Aran from the Michael Newton Institute. I'm the current Director of Education for the Institute, and I want to thank everyone for being present here today. I look forward to sharing some of my experiences with you, having done this work for a really long time. I was at Michael Newton's first training in 2001, interesting time in our lives. And I've been doing this work ever since. It's my great love, and it's really an honor to facilitate these sessions and see the healing and the transformation that takes place in people's lives. Some people have submitted questions before our event today, and I want you to know that you can still submit questions as we go along, and they'll be feeding those questions to me. Before I address the questions that we did receive, there's a couple of announcements that I'd like to make so that you're all aware. First, the Newton Institute has a new website that's going to be going live in a very few days, and it makes it much more user-friendly. It'll be easier for you to all find practicing therapists to do sessions with, and more information about both past life regression and life between lives regression. Also on the website, we have a section where you can find out about how to train if you'd like to become a life between lives regression therapist. Our trainings are listed there. We have one coming in October. That training is full, and we're doing our first training in Mandarin in November. We have another training planned in May, and that one's just been announced, so that's available. Before you take an LBL training, you need to be trained in hypnotherapy and in regression therapy. And you'll find on our website the Alliance Training Program, where we have instructors with programs that meet our qualifications and prepare you to go on to become a life between lives regression therapist. So that's the end of that section. And I'd like to go now to the questions that I've received. So the first question I have here is, why are the number of council elders not the same for all souls? It's a really good question, and it really does vary. Even for the same individual visiting their council more than one time in multiple sessions, they often find that the number of council members are different in each session. And why is that? Well, first, why are some people's councils different than others? I would say it's just like our guide. Some people have more than one guide, and everyone's guide is very different. And I don't think we can really compare them. Our guides are very special to us and appear to us in a way that's meaningful for us and interact with us in a way that's significant for us. And in the same way, these wise elders or council beings appear to us in different ways and in different numbers. The fact is that many people experience council not as real personifications that take on any very specific shape. It can be an energy that isn't the shape of a being and isn't necessarily wearing a robe. Sometimes they do, but again, that's for our own comfort. It's something they're trying to communicate to us by how they appear. And you can have, I've seen councils up to 15, or 12 rather. 12, I guess, is probably the biggest I've seen. But of those 10, 12, or maybe even 15, there are usually a few that will appear to us or come forward to us in order to communicate something to us. In general, we find that there's one central being or energy that's going to work with us on our deeper soul lessons. And then there are often other council beings there that have a specific nature. They're for the specific lifetime that we're working on, or perhaps a specific issue that we're working on. And they'll come forward to impart that energy. I think the important thing to know is that these beings are not judgmental. Often we learn from religion or other kinds of doctrines that we're going to be judged. And I know that the first time I went to visit my counsel, I was a bit reluctant, hesitant, even afraid. And it was surprising to me, but there was something deeper inside me that didn't feel worthy. And as I approached these kind of steps to this place where I was going to meet them, I realized what was going to happen, having read the books. And I felt ashamed, really. And there were two beings that appeared, kind of guards, if you will, that stopped me before I entered and said, no, if you can't go in here with your head held high, then don't go in. And really the message was that I'm not going to be judged. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's really all about learning. And so they prepared me for what was about to unfold when I went in. And what happened with my counsel was really a life review. And it was a very positive, a very healing, a very loving experience. I think that one of the things that most all human beings struggle with is feeling alone or feeling perhaps unloved. And visiting counsel and our guide or guides, we're able to experience really deep, unconditional love and have their assistance in growing and developing. We incarnate onto this planet in a human form, really to refine certain aspects of our character, to develop ourselves as spiritual beings. It's really a big school, if you ask me. And those guides, our guides, and council members or elders are really there to, in a very loving way, assist us in growing and developing, and often reassuring us that we're doing a good job. It's really rare for them to push us. More often than not, I hear guides, I hear council members telling those that I've helped get there that they're taking all of this way too seriously, that they need to lighten up. It's a really common message. I encourage people I work with to just take time to absorb the energy of being with these council members, to really benefit from that. It isn't always just the messages that are being communicated, but the energy of the deepest understanding, the highest good, and unconditional love. So our next question is it possible for a person to request more soul energy for their incarnation during LBL? I had the very same question, and I had the opportunity to ask Michael Newton about this. And he said he had attempted it many times as he explored and developed this work. And he said, no, it's really not possible. Even though I loved and admired Michael very, very much, I felt obligated for my client's sake to attempt to get more soul energy. And I haven't been successful either. What I've seen is that the soul comes with a certain amount of energy for specific reasons. And as it merges with the human body during development in the womb and then following birth, that the human body can only, the particular human body that we've incarnated into can only tolerate so much of the soul energy. The nervous system, the brain, and the physical body are only capable of having a certain amount of that soul energy in it. It can only tolerate it so much. Guides, when they do healing and send energy into someone, are very careful not to overload the nervous system, not to overload the physical body. So I've not been successful in retrieving more soul energy than someone brought in, but I would say what needs to be looked at is if one didn't bring in enough soul energy, why? What was it that the soul felt or believed or thought or decided before incarnating that it would only need a certain amount of energy. Some individuals I've worked with brought very little in because they didn't think that they would have a very long life on Earth and didn't need to bring so much. And then through various experiences and learning and growth, decided to stay longer and wished that they had brought more. So I think that's an important thing to explore, is if you didn't bring enough, why not? And the other thing that I see frequently is not about having not brought enough soul energy in, but during life, through various traumas, especially severe trauma, through often the loss of a loved one, or through great difficulties in life, someone's really near ending their life perhaps, is that there can be loss of soul energy, that some part of us returns home, some part of us goes with the loved one who dies, some part of us longs to return, and we sort of lose some of that soul energy. It doesn't mean our soul is gone, but some of its energy is gone, and that is certainly something that we can reclaim. That's something that can be reclaimed in many different ways. Shamanistic work, shamanism, they often do soul retrieval. It's not that the soul of the person's missing, but some aspect or piece of it is. And I think that this can be achieved in a number of ways. And it's a very important aspect of the healing work that's done in a life between life regression. I work in New York usually, and the pandemic has made things a bit different, but that's where my main office is. And I had someone who came in. She was a twin. She was someone in her mid-70s, and she'd been struggling for about 15 years with chronic illnesses. She really had chronic fatigue, a number of other conditions. And in talking with her, it became clear that her struggles with her health began soon after her twin sister died in a taxi accident in Manhattan. Now, they were very close, and when her sister died in that accident, her twin, the one I was seeing, felt it. She knew that something tragic had occurred, and then soon received the news. Now, as a loyal sister, some part of her felt that, oh, it should have been me, not my sister. And at that time, or over a short period of time following her sister's death, some part of her soul energy actually left, went to be with her, felt that it didn't belong here. And this was really behind the chronic conditions that she was suffering with. So in the LBL, not only did she become aware of the source of her chronic illness, but she was able to retrieve that lost soul energy and find that she had more energy and her health improved. So healing can happen on many, many different levels. I would say that healing really, besides a physical kind of healing, the biggest healing that I see in life between life regressions are understanding soul lessons, that things that a soul has struggled with, not just in this life, but over lifetimes, can be resolved by doing these sessions, can be resolved by doing this work. For me, that's the really biggest aspect of healing that occurs in an LBL. You know, all of the Newton Institute LBL therapists are very skilled regression therapists. And there are generally 3 things that we're looking for when we do a regression, whether it's LBL or past life or childhood or in utero. The first is stored emotions. Stored emotions drive us. Stored emotions cause us to respond or react in certain ways that may not be so appropriate for the moment. They affect our health, our well-being, and how we live. And so during regression, we want to see what emotions are stored, where they came from, and find a way to release or return or resolve them. The second is beliefs. When we have a strong emotional response to an experience, we generally form a belief. And we all have all kinds of limiting beliefs. I'm not enough, it's my fault, the world's a cruel place, it's unfair, right? We all have these beliefs. These are not just aspects of our personality or our psychology in this life. They can be, for sure. But our soul carries these beliefs as well, and it carries them through lifetimes. I know personally, I was working on a certain pattern that was very strong in my life, this life. And when I did regressions around it, I saw that it was in 4 lifetimes prior to this one. That's something that I held deep in my soul, that I truly believed, that I hadn't resolved over 4 lifetimes. And in this life, finally, through LBL and through regression, I saw where that originated. I saw how limiting and how untrue the belief was that I held, and was able to resolve that. And I'll tell you, when you understand a true soul lesson, something that you've carried or you've believed over lifetimes, you know that you need to change course. You know that you need to live in a different way, and you work to change that belief, and not just change the belief, but to live it, to live differently. And even though I knew very clearly that this had to change, it took me time. It took me months. It took almost 9 months for me to really not just get it and understand it, but be able to change course and truly live it. So I think it's important to understand that following what you get in a life between life regression, that there's often work to do. It doesn't mean it's all done, magically resolved. There are great healings that occur, but I would say there are often times where an issue that's become a habit, not just in this life, but even over lifetimes, that we need other assistance in making those changes and being able to really change course and live in a different way. And so regression therapy, soul retrieval, psychotherapy, different therapies can help us in doing that, even some of our own work. I wrote a book recently called Essential Healing, and there are a lot of practices in there that both help a person to prepare for a life between life regression, but have some of these techniques as well. I'm a big fan of you being able to do it for yourself. And so any support that you can get in taking what you learn in an LBL session and then implementing it, I would say, get as much help and support as you can in doing that. The other thing I'd say too is that as the messages about these learnings are conveyed to us from our guide or from our counsel, it isn't just information. There's truly wisdom and empowerment and healing energy in what's being communicated to us. And I would encourage you, and I encourage all my clients when they're doing this, to really just absorb it, to be absorbative, to take it in, not on an intellectual level, but to take it in to their heart and take it in on a soul level, to absorb it. And you'll find that following this session that you can carry that energy, and that helps you make that transition, that transformation. It supports you in doing it. Another question. Let's see. People often read how we can desensitize pain experienced in a past life regression or in a past life. I would be grateful for your words on how we can do this and without changing the events of that life. Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll say that I feel it's very, very important that before doing a life between life regression, everyone should experience a full and vivid past life regression. It's the best preparation there is for an LBL. It lets you clean up some of the mess from the past, and it helps you learn how regression works. It helps the regression therapist learn how you work. Some people are visual, some not. it really gives a good foundation for going on to the life between life. But for past life, what we often find, it's interesting to get the story. It's often important to know what built up to this. But where the biggest healing is, in most cases, is at the end of the life. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the death itself is so significant, but it means that leaving the body and then looking back on that life from a higher perspective, doing kind of life review, looking back and seeing what are the lessons learned, right? What did you decide to do next time or not do next time? And what feelings and emotions are you left with from that life? What have you, it's called past life imprint. What's the past life imprint? What have you brought in with you from the previous life? And this is the place, I think, where the biggest healing is and where the answer to this question is. So if we carry pain from a past life into our current life, my question is why? Why did the soul bring that in with them? After a life, we go through some healing, we go through some education, we go through rejuvenation, we go through pre-birth planning. Why does a soul still carry this pain in? And there isn't one answer, but that's something to explore in this session is why did you bring in this pain? Why did you bring in this pattern? Why did you bring in this belief? And I think that one of the biggest reasons that we, or the soul, brings this pain with it is that it doesn't want to repeat that old pattern. It wants to remember what happened back there and believes the way to remember that and avoid repeating it is to carry that pain in. Well, if I remember what happened to me when I was betrayed, if I remember what happened to me when I betrayed, if I remember how I died and hold on to my anger about that, then I will never let that happen again. And it's exactly the opposite. When we hold on to the energy of that, it demands release. It'll cause repetition. It's a magnet that will draw into our lives the same kind of thing that happened back there. And so the healing during the sessions comes in the soul remembering, oh, that's what happened. That's what I decided. I decided I never wanted to behave that way again. I decided I would never let that happen to me again. And so I held on to it. And the healing comes in saying, I can remember not to behave that way. I can refuse to be treated that way. And I can let go of the pain. It's the misunderstanding and the misbelief that I have to bring that pain with me or I might repeat, because that carrying that pain is what causes the repetition. And so the healing comes in letting go of the pain and reminding the soul that it can hold on to the understanding that's coming through it. It can hold on to the determination to not do that again or let that happen again. So I think that's really, we don't want to, in some kinds of hypnotherapy, for our current life, we'll do a reframe. We'll give a different perspective or a different angle. It's really helpful for phobias and fears and this kind of thing, kind of changing the events. But for past life, you don't want to do that. You do want to have a higher perspective, and that's why we use hypnotherapy or hypnosis, because in hypnosis, the mental mind steps back enough to reveal subconscious mind. And once that happens, it reveals superconscious mind or soul mind. And so it's really a method of expanding consciousness so that a person has a higher perspective and a more objective perspective. And it's from this higher and more objective perspective that we can look back and say, okay. It's from that perspective that we can receive greater wisdom and assistance from our guides and other wise beings as well. The next question I received is how to heal yourself faster at all three levels: mind, body, and spirit. I've been asked by the council to heal myself faster and directed me towards shamanic healing. I took a session and it was good. Is there anything else that we can do? I think I really addressed that. There are many things that we can do. And yes, after insights, after understanding about soul lessons and old patterns, right? There's often work to do. And I would encourage you to seek whatever methodology is most beneficial and most effective for you. I think that in traditional psychotherapy, that many psychotherapists, social workers, point of frustration is that they're working with the psychology of the individual. And I believe we need to take things a step further and work with the soul. There are more and more psychologists, psychotherapists that know this and are doing this. But it's still somewhat uncharted territory. Michael Newton developed a beautiful model and mapped out a lot of this. But once you resolve some of the stuff that lives in the body, once you resolve some of the stuff that lives in the psyche, in the mental mind, and in the emotions and the psychology of the individual, you'll find that the source of many of our life challenges, patterns, habits, live deeper than the subconscious mind. They live in the superconscious mind. They live in the soul. I began this work believing that the soul was perfect. But if the soul is perfect, why is it incarnating? We incarnate to learn. I think there's something perfect in the soul that's a part of the universal sea of consciousness. You know, I had a near-death experience about 20 years ago. Some of you know, I was struck by lightning, and there were about 10 minutes of my life missing, and it was through regression therapy I was able to recover those missing 10 minutes. And the reason they were missing is my body was laying there dead in the street after being struck by lightning. And it was that journey, being free of mental mind, being free of body, back into the spirit realm, to meet my guides, to do life review, that was so transformational for me. I experienced unconditional love, like we all long for or even strive for, but it's something I experienced. And I experienced this oneness that, again, I think we all long for. This feeling separate, apart from, is a deep wound in all human beings, I believe. And to experience having a sense of myself, my own consciousness, with absolutely no separation at all, feeling not just connected, but a part of all things, being one with all things, being all things at the same time, and still having some self-awareness. That was hugely healing, hugely transformational for me. And these are some of the transformational experiences that someone can have during an LBL as well. I was asked recently about how to best prepare for a life between life regression. And I think that not so many people know, but there's a beautiful book called The Little Book of Life Between Lives that was published by Llewellyn, the same publisher as Michael's best-selling books. And that book is the best preparation, I believe, that you could do for a life between life regression. It talks about how it works. It talks about how you can prepare yourself. It talks about what to expect and what not to expect. I think it helps resolve a lot of the questions and even misunderstandings that people have before they do one of these sessions. And I would highly recommend it. And as I said, have a past life regression first. Get your feet wet. Learn how it works. Get some of the stuff resolved before you make that journey into spirit. And of course, the other way I think that's most helpful is meditate. Ask your guides to assist you on the journey. I think that they're waiting for you to come and visit, and they'll really help you to get there. So making that request ahead of time, I think, is really, really helpful. Now, I think some more questions have come in. Let me see if I can see what they are. I don't see them yet. They'll be sending them to me, I believe. Let me check here. see there are two more, but I didn't see what they are. Would a soul come into a life with 80% soul energy? Yes, I think that's a lot, but definitely. It's so interesting. You know, what we see when we're regressing back is that we start with childhood and then we go to in utero, in the womb, and then past life, and then into spirit. And it's often in utero where we get the first glimpses of the soul's nature. Now, some souls are quite reluctant. They're sort of like, oh, do I really have to do this again? I've even heard some say, oh, my guides tricked me into this. I don't think guides trick us, but it certainly can feel that way sometimes to some people. And other souls are coming with great determination. They're determined to learn something, to accomplish something, to achieve something in the world, and there's nothing stopping them. Nothing stopping them. And a soul that comes in with this great determination will often bring in more soul energy. I just met someone, worked with someone recently who was born in the 50s, 2 months premature. It's amazing that she survived, but this person was so determined to come here, to live, to survive, to get something done, and in her 70s now, still, almost 70, still lives that way, very determined. So yeah, some souls bring in 80%. I think an interesting aspect of this that I find quite fascinating is that there is always some unincarnated aspect of our soul that remains in spirit. That's why when we go into spirit during one of these sessions, we can meet those who are still living. It's an amazing healing that can occur between two partners, between a parent and a child, between two individuals who are struggling in some way in this current life to go into spirit and meet not just heart to heart, but meet soul to soul, free of the human ego. You know, something that took me a while to grasp in doing this work, although Michael talked about it, was that we have our human nature, our human personality, not just our body, but our human nature and personality, our human character. But we also have our soul nature, our soul character, and they can often be quite different. My human nature, personally, is much more shy, introverted, definitely wouldn't want to be here on the camera talking to 70 or 80 people. My humanness says, no, don't do that. Sanella asked me, no, I'm not, no. And my soul says, you got to do that. That's what you're here for, right? And so finding myself on a stage in front of 500 people, for me as a human being, was really painful. Being in front of a camera in a documentary film was really, for me as a human being, painful. Some people love that. They thrive on that. They look forward to that. Some people even need that. No, for me, run the other way. But all along, my soul says, say yes, do it. And so it took time to come to terms with those two very different aspects of my character, my human nature and my soul nature. And I think that understanding that we have both the soul nature and the human nature, and finding how each has its own value and finding how to blend them and make them work together. Took me a long time, but they're working pretty well together. And I think it's something that'd be good to explore during one of these sessions, or something that becomes clear during one of these sessions as well. Hi, Paul. 3 things to look for in regression. Emotions, beliefs, and what's the third? No, thanks for reminding me of that. The third is probably the biggest and most important. Thanks for bringing me back to that one. It's survival strategies. It's what we learn to do to stay safe and to get love and acceptance. Now, I think it's easy to explore that in our current life. As a child, we all learn to do things, right? We're going to be the quiet one. We're going to be the perfect one. We're going to be the pleaser. We're going to be the problem child, whatever it is. We all have these strategies, and we learn pretty early on what gets us love and attention. But unfortunately, we often spend the rest of our life living that same pattern, and it's often causing great trouble, right? And so regression, we can go back and find those and resolve them. But the soul also carries these survival strategies. If you're killed in your past life because you spoke up, you spoke the truth, right? And you were tortured, you were punished, or killed for it. The soul looks back at that and says, next time I'm going to do invisibility. Next time I'm going to fly under the radar. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. So yeah, that causes trouble. It really causes a problem. So going back to find out where these harmful, obviously some of them are valuable, but where these harmful survival strategies began, get a new perspective and resolve that. I'll never forget, I had a father. I'd had the chance to work with both of his adult children. He came in finally for LBL, and his adult children had told me, we have such a problem with our father. He is just nuts about holidays. We all have to come together every holiday, and it's such a big deal, and we're just really tired of it. And it didn't seem like such a big problem or issue for me, but it certainly was for them. And when he came in, what was behind all of that was really revealed. In his past life, he was a fur trapper. He lived in northern Canada, in the wilderness, and he loved nature. He loved the wilderness, and he really dreaded going to town. Now, he had to for supplies and to sell his furs, so he would do it, but he couldn't get out of there fast enough. And his life ended alone in a storm, in the forest, in the woods, in Canada. And for him, that was the perfect place. He loved it, and that was the perfect ending for him. But as he looked back over that life, as he did life review, he said to himself, well, next life, I want to learn how to have relationships. I want to learn about having family. He'd had no family. I want to learn about being with people. And so that was really his intention for this current life. And well, he was doing it. He was very unskilled. He didn't have a clue, but he was very determined to learn and to make sure that that happened. So it was a soul lesson for him in this life. And maybe he was a bit overzealous about it, or at least his adult children felt he was. But he was really right on track. Oh, and speaking about being on track, I had a young man, late 30s, almost 40, come in. And his theme, his kind of headline was, I think I should settle down. My friends are telling me I should settle down. People at work are telling me I should settle down. My girlfriends are telling me I should settle down. He said, maybe I should settle down. So that was one of his questions, was, should I settle down? And as I took him back and finally got him into spirit, and he met his guide said to him very clearly, his guide said, you are an explorer soul. You have come to Earth to have as many different experiences as possible, and you are right on track. So it would have been a disaster for him to settle down. Maybe people at work or partners weren't so happy about it, but that was exactly what he was here to do, and he was really right on track. We have one more question. Why do we need to learn to be independent, not rely on others, when in the end, we are all supposed to merge with the source? Yeah, that I wish I could give you a really simple answer to. So being independent, I can certainly speak to. Why we separate, that's a bigger question. When I had my NDE, I not only had the experience of being one, being a part of everything, total oneness, I also had the very painful experience of becoming separate from that. And from my own personal experience, that had something to do with my tendency to be judgmental. So that was something I came out of the wholeness to learn and work on, so I could become more whole again. Independent, there's different aspects of it. I'll never forget one of my early sessions. I had someone come in. We ask people to prepare questions before their session. I don't limit the number. Some people do, but I don't. But I know why some people limit it, because I had someone come in with 7 pages of single-spaced typed questions. And the very first question on the list was, how are souls created? Right? So I worked childhood, womb, past life, into spirit. Here comes her guide. Now she's ready. Okay, I want my questions answered. And her first question to the guide is, how are souls created? And her guide just kind of looks at her, not answering. She becomes more insistent. How are souls created? And he shrugs his shoulders and says, I don't know. You tell me. Now she's mad. I want my questions answered. And the guide is just kind of shaking his head and saying, you tell me. This went on for a while. And often guides will work in this way. They don't just tell us directly. They'll behave a certain way. They'll show us a certain scene. They'll take us to a certain place. And then her guide began to talk with her, really communicate. And often they communicate more telepathically than words talking. And the guide's message to her was that you have been to every psychic, palm reader, card reader, on and on. He went down this whole list, and it was true. I didn't know, but she'd been to all these different people before she came in now for LBL to get all these answers from outside. And the guide said to her, you have all the answers within. All the answers are within you. And he showed her a kind of a sphere that she described as a spherical library that she could access to access inner wisdom and knowledge to get her own questions answered. And his big message to her was independence. Look within for the answers rather than depending on other people to tell you what to do, guide you, or show you the way. And so that was a huge, huge learning for her. Somewhat disappointing at first, but exactly what she needed to hear and do. Yeah. So, supposed to merge with source. Yeah, I know. That's our journey to learn and grow. The different theories. I wish I could tell you exactly why. And I would say, if you have a session, ask. See if you can get the answer to that. It may vary a bit from person to person. So I'll see if there are more questions coming. But let me talk a bit about healing in an LBL, because that's part of our topic, is soul lessons and healing. And I've spoken to some of the kinds of healings that can occur. But what I haven't touched on is that often upon returning into spirit, there is a kind, Michael wrote about this, of course, there's a kind of rejuvenation that occurs that works to clear the heaviness from the previous life. Some of the stuff that we carry with us, and it rejuvenates, it re-energizes, it heals and clears some of that heaviness. But there are many other places in spirit realm that people are guided to receive light, to receive healing. I think a common one that people experience is a kind of a waterfall of energy that washes down over them. I know in my first session, there were these concentric rings of energy kind of like a waterfall. I would say there were color, sound, and energy all mixed together that had the most healing effect possible on me. And, when you visit this kind of place during an LBL, you can easily revisit it again on your own through meditation, quiet times, through remembering that experience. You can go back there and receive more of that healing energy. And while you're there receiving it during the session, I encourage you to take it into your soul, but also allow it to flow into your human body that's at rest there on the couch or sofa or bed or wherever it is you're having your session. It's important during these sessions to be sure to help the human body, the mental mind also, to benefit from the healing that occurs in these places. One more new question coming. Do you do sessions online? And if so, do you do sessions online? If so, how can one schedule one? I find your kindness and understanding mesmerizing and think I'd do well in a session with you. You can reach me at paul@paularan.com. But as I said in the beginning, maybe you missed that, Newton Institute has a new website that will be launched very, very soon. And there's Find a Practitioner spot there on the webpage. We have over 200 practitioners, it's not so many really, around the world. And I encourage you to visit there and look at the person's bio, look at their picture, even contact a few and see those who resonate with you. It's a very deep and intimate experience. It's really a bearing of the soul. And I recommend having someone that you feel really comfortable with. It isn't just the skill level, but the compassion, the energy, and the synchronicity of both. See who you're comfortable with. Yeah, I'm difficult to hypnotize. Michael did a great job with me with PLR. Highly recommend him. So this is a question that often comes up and a concern, of course, can I be hypnotized? And I think that, well, number one, that's why we do the past life regression first, but I think more often than not, there's some misunderstanding about what hypnosis is, how it looks, how it feels, and what you should experience. And I think that the little book of Life Between Lives really addresses that, and how I address it with someone I'm working with is to look at hypnosis in a different way. It's not asleep, it's not unconscious. Michael Newton talked about the duality of mind, that you have both the mental analytical mind and you have the soul mind present. And you want both present. I think oftentimes people expect that mental mind will be completely absent, and it isn't, and it really shouldn't be. You want conscious mind present, but not controlling. You want conscious mind present, but not trying to remember for you, not trying to do it. Hypnosis is a tool to help mental mind step back. And what's really happening is that consciousness is expanding. So even during the deepest part of an LBL, there may be occasions where mental mind will step in, where it has some commentary, where it tries to help you understand or figure something out. And in the beginning of the session, it's often working hard to do it for you. And so there's a learning process of getting mental mind to be present, but not intervening, not doing it for you. One of the reasons it's important that it's present is it has to learn. Conscious mind has to learn from the session. And if it's gone, how can it learn from what happened? It won't know. So there's very little benefit from it. The other thing is that it's not, sometimes there's trauma. This can be trauma from this life. This can be trauma back in the past life, right? And the mental mind recognizes there's something disturbing, something upsetting that's about to appear. It's about to come up. And this is where conscious mind will often put the brakes on in order to make it safe for the individual. And I think that's a good thing. Sometimes there's great trauma in childhood that someone hasn't come to us for. They want to have this really profound spiritual experience, and yet there's trauma back there. And that's what will come up first sometimes. And mental mind will start to say, no, I'm not so ready for that. It's a safeguard, really. And so I'll explain to someone during the first talk in the session is that we want mental mind present as a safeguard. We want it there so that if there's something that's overwhelming, it can put the brakes on, it can slow it down, stop it, even say, no, now's not the time for this. I had someone who came in twice for past life regression. She went back to a scene in her childhood where she's opening a closet door and the mental mind stepped in and stopped the session both times. Right? She was really frustrated with it. I was frustrated with it as well. And it was after that second session that we talked about what happened and why that was happening. And it was then that she really revealed to me that I call it FPS, full plate syndrome. So she had a teenage son that had recently been arrested. He was in jail. She was trying to get him out. She was going through a really messy divorce and moving house. She was moving. She had to move to another home. And so her mental mind said, yeah, there's something there to look at. And now is not the time. Really resolve what's happening now, get through these hard times, and then come back and do this. And I was so grateful. She was so grateful, really, that mental mind was present enough to say, no, we're not going to dig up even more stuff right now. And she came back, 6 or 9 months later and continued and had really good healing session. So understand that mental mind is part of the process. We don't want the memories coming from it. And it's used to keeping you safe. It's used to figuring this stuff out for you. It's used to remembering for you. When I first began my own soul journey, my own essential healing soul work, my mental mind said, no, don't do that. Something bad will happen. It was so used to keeping me safe and contained and making sense of the world for me that it thought it really had to hold on and hold all the pieces together, and it was afraid of letting go. And I had to realize that I was much more than my mental mind, and I began to observe it and then dialogue with it, and then I could even tell it, thank you, mental mind, for keeping me safe, but this work is really important for me, and you can be of the greatest assistance. You can help me the most by stepping back, not leaving. You don't have to go away, but step back enough that I can do this. And when I'm done, then you can help me analyze it. You can help me make sense of it. You can help me integrate it. But don't get in my way. Step back, be present. And in so many of these kinds of things, it's acknowledging that resistant part, or that part that's afraid or challenged, by thanking it. Anyone that's worked with me or studied with me knows a lot of what I do is about working with the heart shield or the heart protection. Now, we all have some form of heart protection in place, and we didn't just say, oh, one day it'd be great to have this shielding, this armoring, this iron wall over my chest, or this brick wall, whatever it might be. But it was out of necessity that we worked to protect ourselves, to build this heart protection. And so when I'm facilitating a session, I'll guide someone first, observe your thoughts. Just notice what it is that you hear your mind saying. And by doing this, we're separate from our mind and we can begin to observe it. And generally the mind will be saying one of three things. It's either quiet, it's helping us, or it has a concern. And the concerns aren't a problem unless we don't know that it's a concern. So once we know what the concern is, then we can address it, right? And then going from mind, an observing mind, we go to heart next, because heart is really the doorway to your inner world, but heart's protected. So how do we get that open, right? So the first way to get heart open is to explore what that heart protection looks and feels like. I'll have the person tune into it, to see it with their inner eyes, to sense and feel into it, and have them describe it to me. And once they've described it, I'll encourage them to interact with it. And the first part of the interaction is usually thanking it, thanking that protection for being there and keeping them safe. And once it's thanked and acknowledged and not beaten down with a crowbar or blown open with dynamite, but thanked, it will generally soften. Then we can find a way in. And once we go in through that heart protection, then we can go into the heart that lies beneath, to the emotions that are held there, and that doorway to the inner world is more open. So for me, the beginning of these sessions is not somewhere out there, but it's really a journey deeper within, towards the very core self, towards the authentic self, towards the soul essence in the individual, where we then connect with that energy and then can make the journey back into childhood, womb, and past life, and into spirit. And I think I have another question. I had an LBL, know what my soul lessons and patterns are to resolve, but I'm still struggling mightily with that. Would you recommend doing another LBL to see if there's something still missing, or what else I can do to clear the pattern? Yes, absolutely. Our first LBL especially is a really big session. There's so much to explore and experience and absorb. They're so full, usually. After the experience, I say, just let yourself marinate in it, really take it in, remember what you remember, start to live what you can, and then review, then watch the video, watch or listen to the recording, and it will fill in many of the missing gaps and a lot of the details. But as you say, there are often patterns and issues that we know where we're still stuck. And that's a place where we can use help by another therapy or by a second LBL. A second LBL, in my experience, is shorter and much more specific. You can certainly do a second LBL for a very specific reason like that. And I would encourage you to follow it up. It's not at all uncommon, especially, as I said, on my own case, where there was this soul pattern over lifetimes. Even though I knew, it took me a lot of work to really be able to do it differently. I've achieved that, and I can happily say that's done now after lifetimes, but it took work and it took support from a number of different people and different modalities. Let's see here. If souls know everything, why would they incarnate to learn? I agree. Souls don't know everything. I think there's something all-knowing in the soul, but really, our souls carry misunderstandings. They carry false beliefs. They carry energies and emotions and patterns from past lives, and we're working on resolving those. We're working on shedding those limiting beliefs. We're working on developing aspects of our character, not just our human personality, but our soul nature. You know, often people come for an LBL thinking it's going to be this amusement park in the spirit world, and there they find themselves working on being more compassionate, being more loving towards others, or sometimes the harder one is even being more loving towards self. These are soul lessons, and these are the most valuable aspects of an LBL, but they're not always the most fun aspects of it. So there was more to that. Would it not be more likely for souls to incarnate to experience what they know and remember? Yeah, but I, this is a pet peeve of mine, is this very experienced and knowing soul comes to incarnate and then joins with the human body merges with the brain and the nervous system and gets to have amnesia, where we forget a lot of what we know. I feel like I've spent a lot of my life working to remember what I knew when I came. It doesn't seem very fair to me. It's a part of life. But yeah, it bothers me that we forget that. Different answers for it. It's not something I ever asked Michael Newton about, but I think he addresses it in Journey of Souls. But yeah, these kinds of things I need to know from my own personal perspective, my own personal experience. And I understand that coming into this life with full memory from past life could be more than confusing. But I don't really understand fully why we come with this amnesia either. And I think that that's one of the reasons I work so hard to help people remember what it is they have within themselves, to reconnect with their divine nature and their inner wisdom. While in hypnosis, I tend to attract a lot of external entities or energies looking for resolution. Yeah. So we talk about boundaries in our human lives, right? Often our boundaries earlier in life are breached, not respected, and many of us have permeable boundaries. And I think that there's work to be done then on reconstructing those boundaries, not to isolate, but to remain safe and protected. If our boundaries are permeable, my question is why? How did that happen? And is there a misunderstanding or something within self that leads to that? So one of the more common problems around this kind of thing is putting others before self. And as someone who's been a pleaser and caretaker, caregiver, that's been a lesson for me, is putting others before myself and not having good boundaries that way, and had to really learn. At first it felt selfish to have a very clear no, right? No. Now, there's another instance where I would say an empath. There are souls that are much more sensitive than I am, that are much more permeable. I happen to have the kind of body and constitution that isn't so permeable. And so someone who is absorbative or more of an empath can tend to pick up or absorb other energies, thought patterns, feelings, and emotions. It's not something I struggle with, but I know that it's certainly not at all uncommon, especially people that are sensitive or seeking this kind of work. But I believe that there's certainly different methodologies for protecting yourself, but I think you have to look at the root of the consciousness that makes you vulnerable or permeable in that way. And for this specific individual, I don't know, but I would encourage you to explore what that is in you that causes you to pick up that kind of stuff and to work to resolve that. Here's another question. Can you mention our SOTA September edition will be about birth and incarnation? Yeah, the Newton Institute has a wonderful journal that you can subscribe to. Comes out a few times a year. And there's always a theme. LBL therapists and LBL therapists submit articles for this. And the coming issue is going to be about birth and incarnations. And you can find the link for that on the Newton Institute.org. That's the website, is newtoninstitute.org. And I think that we have gone a little bit over time, but I really loved meeting with you. I wish I could have seen all your faces. I saw some of the questions and comments as people joined. Thank you for coming. We will be doing this again, another speaker. I encourage you, next time we schedule an event, if you like, submit questions. It's a great way to connect with people doing this work and for us all to share our experiences. Thank you very much for coming today. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you all soon.